So one of the most difficult things as far as residential construction, a lot of us that have done commercial construction understand the value of as-built drawings. How do we do as-built and how do we utilize BlueBeam in residential construction? We're going to show you right now, so check this segment out on BlueBeam.
You and I, we never show emotions, we just keep it down inside. Yeah, you and I, both longing for expression for the things we like.
So we're here on site at Project Blow Your Mind again, and this is a very complex project. We have 4 acres, nearly 4 acres, fully landscaped, ton of detail. We have a ton of additional structures in addition to the main house here, and part of that is the continual flow of construction, right? Here in Arizona, we have what's called retention basins. What that means is when we don't have parks or community parks where the water, we don't have storm drains in Arizona, so all the water goes to the parks. When that's not in play and the owners have the real estate to retain that water from monsoons and flooding, they have to create what we call retention basins. So we work with our civil engineer and we work on a grading and drainage plan so that everything slopes away from the house. We utilize these retention basins now to hold that water. But what happens now is we want to optimize that retainage basin. We don't want that to be a dead space in the property, you know, because during the monsoon season, July, August, it may only rain a few times and fill up. The rest of the year, you're using that space. So how do we coordinate and utilize that area? And what ends up happening, as most of us know in construction, things change. Clients make changes. As we go into construction, things aren't what they were designed on plan. We have to make alterations. And fortunately, through BlueBeam, which is the software that we're using, you know, Spencer, who's our PM on this project, he has extensive experience with BlueBeam. And so now he can work on the different pinpoints. Pool is one, so stay tuned for our upcoming video on the pool. This is an incredible pool design. And it's changed over time, and so Spencer's worked through these points that we're going to speak about here to show how we implement that with the civil drawings and coordinate that with the house. It's the same thing with our retainage basin here on the northeast side of the property. And there, this has been converted to the wiffle ball field that has both artificial turf and real grass. So let's take you over so you can see behind the scenes what we're doing with BlueBeam as that's passed either our pool company, our landscape company, back to the civil engineer. And now we have an updated as-built set of drawings that we can work off, measure, template, and build correctly from. So let's walk you over here with Spencer. As you can see here, he has pulled up our civil design. And as I mentioned here in the northeast corner of the project, this was basin 2. So this is a retainage basin that's now been converted into a wiffle ball field, as you can see here, the baseball diamond, home plate. So walk us through, Spencer, just how this is changing over time now with BlueBeam.
Yeah, so we met with the owner and he wanted to have a wiffle ball field that had some artificial turf, some real grass. But then we started looking at where the sidewalks were going to go, and I had suggested we have a retaining wall behind home plate, you know, just as a backstop, but also the elevation is higher right here. Well, that kind of expanded into the retaining walls going to first base and then ended up going all the way to here. But since then, now we're doing a retaining wall all the way around the whole field. So those drawings got marked up, you know, all this.
And you can see here, these are all your notes, right? That you're talking about home plate, 10-foot radius to center retaining wall. And so you're essentially laying out all of the notes through BlueBeam, redlining everything. Not really an RFY, it's more clarification for the civil engineer so he can make these updates.
That's correct. So this is also for the landscaper, because I was trying to show him what's already been done, where the sidewalks are already poured and where they need to be based on this new design. So
and if I interrupt you, well, what's really important is that it's not just logistically for you to understand that you're building off the right set, but you think about pricing, right? Like to get the accurate price and to have make sure everyone's bidding apples per apples and that they're bidding correctly, they have to know the exact scope. The only way they can do that is by having this information.
So I was able to take this information, give it to the landscape architect, and then he updated the design so that the owner could review the design and approve it. So this is kind of what came of our walkthroughs and my markups. So we've added the retaining all the way around. There's steps coming down into it. There's a ramp here on this corner. There's another set of steps here. This retaining wall got pushed 10 feet to the east so that some large trees could be planted right here. So part of the reason that we did all of this work too is so we can give this information back to the civil engineer so he can double check our calculations for this retention basin and make sure it has the correct volume. Because if it needs to be lowered for any reason, we need to, you know, bring the grader back out here and lower it down a few inches in order to keep our calculations.
And then now you've added this vegetation all the way around, so this can be like just a beautiful element instead of just a retainage basin. Now we've beautified this essentially to have this amazing creation in the northwest corner or northeast corner. Now, as you zoom out here to show kind of the whole plan, in our previous video when we talked about structural steel, he had talked about right here, this is the trampoline barn, right? This is the wedding pavilion on this side that we'll dive into later, as well as the RV garage. But let's look at the pool, how that's changed over time through BlueBeam and through your RFIs, just based on our great room fireplace and everything centered out here in the middle of the property.
Yeah, so the pool guys were out here and they did a layout based on the as-built conditions of the house. And then I also talked about some of the planters that are going to be out here in this Basin 1 event area. I also talked about how there's a fireplace here where we've adjusted the doors to be centered on the fireplace. So I suggested, hey, as you're doing your layout, you might want to make sure that the pool gets centered on that fireplace and on the doors. And so they made some slight adjustments, in this east-west direction. They adjusted the steps that are in front of the patio, in front of the guest casita. The civil engineer came out this morning and shot points at all of the corners. And so he'll take that information back and update the civil drawings. And now our drawings will have an exact location of where the pool is located. And then they can adjust the drainage all the way around the pool and make sure that everything gets updated to where it's actually going to be built.
And what's really important for us as builders going through this BlueBeam, where we can layer it through BlueBeam, and this has helped, especially on some of our hillside builds working through BlueBeam, that we can layer the house to make sure everything lines up from elevations and retaining walls and the house pad itself. But more importantly, as you said with civil, that the grading and drainage plan is really important, so we're grading everything away from the house, right? We don't want water coming into the home. Water's our biggest enemy. That's why waterproofing and drainage away from the house is so important. But as you can see here, the amount of detail and layers through BlueBeam, it's great software as you learn to optimize that and use that. And you can also add these little bubbles and RFIs and comment sections very easily. And it works great. I know Spencer, early on in this project, part of this project had to do with demoing existing houses and existing landscape. We had 2 properties, we did a lot combination, we tore those houses down. So Spencer was able to take like a Google view, aerial view of the property through BlueBeam. He's able to identify what trees are staying, what are being removed, and we could have that signed off by the landscape designer, or landscape architect, our landscaper, as well as the client. So BlueBeam for the win right here.